And welcome everyone to Rock M Radio videocast, I guess, and podcast. This is a brand new episode of Dive Cuts. Hello, I am your host, Sam Snelling. You can see right here, Sam Snelling with me I see him on the right. He may be on your left. I don't even know. Matt Harris. Matt. Yeah, you were pointing to the right spot.
Yeah.
And you can see like our Twitter handles and everything. So we are we're like set. We're good to go. It is still portal season, Matt. How are you feeling?
40. We've cleared 40 names on the board. Yeah, I thought maybe last week it might slow down a little bit, if only because that's usually when the biggest glut of names come into the portal, and then we start to see it begin to ebb down, and it's not. If you want to go have fun with Bart Torvik and play with any parameters you want for a roster position, you'll find it. It is a buyer's market right now in the transfer portal. Like Harrison Ingram went into the transfer portal today, a 4 or 5 star, and we're like, oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah, like the number of like former like McDonald's and like Jaden Bradley from Alabama.
I got Jaden Bradley weighing at like noon today. It's bonkers.
And that's a guy who played significant minutes.
Yeah, he was not starved
last year.
He was not starved for a role or time.
Where's everybody going?
I do think that I saw there's an AAU director in Texas that I follow that made this point. Who you have around you and advising you right now is probably more important than anything, because at some point the carousel is going to stop, and there are going to be some guys who maybe don't wind up, getting the kind of ride they thought they were going to get out of this. I don't know how much of it is guys feeling that it's NIL related. I don't know how much of it is, we had a lot of guys who went through recruitments, or part of it was in COVID, and, they maybe didn't get the same sort of typical recruiting cycle that we've seen. Or if it's just now roster construction has fully shifted towards, your freshman year, Jaden Bradley notwithstanding, is a de facto redshirt year. I think you can, look at Aiden Shaw, not as a prime case of that. Aiden's year was a typical year for a freshman in his range of the recruiting rankings. In, the last 5 years, it's considered typical. And he only played 23% of minutes. So I think the difference now is if you are even a highly touted guy and you're coming into a roster, you may have to spend that first year effectively as a reserve, or, and really excel in order to have a prime slot there. It's because you can go into the portal now and like just scoop out a handful of 35+% shooters on high volume. If you need a floor space, you can find one. If you need an experienced combo guard, like Tyler Perry went in today. Like, you need an experienced combo guard. You need a scoring point. Max Aismas went in yesterday. Like, the level of high-end productive talent that's gone into the portal is just bonkers. It's absolutely insane.
And honestly, like, it is sort of one of those things where, and as we get, I think, back into the more regular cycles and more, I think where guys are progressing a little bit more linear, like maybe they were in the past, before COVID, because I still think the COVID interruption, did a lot for, stunning some growth of guys. And so you maybe, were doing a lot of guesswork where maybe you weren't quite doing as much a few years ago. But it is one of those things where I start to almost wonder, like, if you're, say, like, 135th in the top 150, so you're a good, like, bottom end of a 4-star, and like coming out of your junior year, you have all kinds of high major offers.
You need to commit right now.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. Is like, do you, like, wouldn't it maybe be more prudent to like look at some mid-major pluses where you're going to be able to go, you're going to be able to play right away, you're going to probably be an impact guy right away, and then like after a year or two of doing that, like then your options for where you can go, as a sophomore or a junior are a lot higher and a lot bigger.
I think there's some merit to it, in certain situations, particularly if you feel like you've, been with, those staffs longer in your recruitment. I think this is about the time, we're starting to see like warm-up events on the grassroots circuit, over the last couple of weeks. And I'm sure, in the next 2 weeks, we're going to start reading about stock risers in the spring, and you're going to read about high majors coming in and getting in on guys. And, to a certain extent, that's not too risky of behavior. You still have time to commit. Most guys are still committing like in July or August or September. But, if you feel like high majors are now only going to take 2 to 3 guys in slots every year, do you want to wait around and try and play the roulette of, am I going to be able to get one of these 2-3 slots here? Or do I have, a good Mountain West program, a good A10 program, a really good AAC program that I can get into? And like you're saying, so I think that's the balance that we're going to see. But I think the other thing that we're going to eventually see is, if you look at the 3 freshmen that Missouri's bringing in, all those guys around 100th in the composite, we like them. We like their high upside for all of them. But you look at the way that Missouri is going about its roster construction and its portal efforts, I like all those guys, from a developmental perspective. But man, if Missouri does what it wants to do and it's aspiring to do, it's hard to see a lot of minutes for those guys in year one. So you better be on board with the developmental plan, because, CY, Cosmo Peters, digging up. Those guys can go into the portal and tell Dennis, I've got a 21, 22-year-old kid with 3 years of solid production that we can bring in right now and fill this need for us. So you better be comfortable in some situations with, you're going to take a de facto redshirt year, and you better believe in the staff's developmental plan and in the structure and in just the entire environment you're going to be in, because you may not see a lot of minutes early on. I think it's going to come down to, I think, a lot, the compromises you might have made in terms of personality fit, or, other areas of your recruitment, I think now go out the window, because you're not just going to be able to default to, well, at least I'm going to be able to bowl. That's gone and out the window now. You better like the entire environment and the entire package. So the question I have, is that going to lead some guys, like in 75 or 125 of the composite, to start committing, in May and June? They're going to say, I like my spot. I want to get on my offer. I want to make sure I've locked in my spot and, just get this done with and focus on, the rest of my summer and my senior year. So I think that's going to be fascinating to see what the trickle down is. That's not what people hear. They're here but they want to hear portal stuff.
Well, but I think, I think that is sort of like the domino effect of the portal. And the portal, like we were kind of mentioning just a few of the big names, like since last we talked. So for anybody watching or listening to this, I would recommend heading over to the rocknation.com main page. You'll find the transfer tracker. We're updating that, sometimes 2-3 times a day with, new updates on guys that are being contacted, potential visits that are coming, and trying to kind of give people an idea of, like I think I updated today when Tyler Perry hit. And for the people listening, it's Tyler Perry, just so you know, North Texas point guard, really good player and really popular player, going to be in the portal. A lot of people seem to expect he's probably going to follow, Grant McCaslin, who took the job at Texas Tech. That would make a lot of sense. If you're Tyler Perry, though, you probably want to make sure you're at least listening to a few other places. Yeah. He is a native of Oklahoma. It is kind of like close to the Arkansas-Oklahoma border, so like a lot of schools in that area are probably going to try to get in. I still that but that's one of the things that are in all those updates on the transfer tracker, is the fact that we think that he's probably even though Missouri's been in contact, we think this guy is probably destined to end up in Lubbock.
Yeah. At this point, the real goal is to figure out, which of 40 names has any validity to it. And realistically, right now, there's probably just 5 to 6 names that I think most people are probably going to focus on. Yeah, the other ones, it's, one, report that, hey, Missouri reached out and contacted them. But they're probably really only 5 to 6 names on the board at this point. We tried to provide some salient updates on where those guys are, but it's still a volume business right now. The board is not shrinking. We are waiting for the board to shrink, and it is just growing. It just keeps getting bigger. For every name that comes off, probably 2 or 3 come on at this point. It feels that way.
Yeah, and we've had, so Missouri added, John Tonje
A week ago.
That was a week ago. And since then, I feel like there's only been 2 or 3 other commitments within the SEC. Arkansas got
Kenyon Menfield.
Menafield?
Yeah.
Menafield?
From Washington.
Yeah.
Jamin Brakefield decided to stay at Ole Miss. Talon Cooper, a solid point guard, is going to go back home. He's from South Carolina. He's going to return from Minnesota to play for Lamont Perry. And then I think Tonje is the only other one I've seen right now. Maybe Florida got a transfer, I think.
Well, Florida got the kid from Yale.
Yeah, got EJ Jarvis, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And South Carolina did take another player from the Citadel.
Just robbing that
little brother.
Robbing that fake military academy. Robbing it. So there's activity, going on. I think the Missouri.
Well, let's most recent update that we got, at least today. So they did reach out to Tyler Perry. They also reached out to a Division II transfer, a kid who I wouldn't sleep on this as a potential impact transfer. 6'9", shoots the ball really well. Jonathan Pierre from Nova Southeastern in Davie, Florida, I believe. So definitely a guy who, I don't necessarily think that's something that Missouri is going to end up with this kid, but they did reach out. So did Duke and all kinds of top level schools. And then Marshall transfer Micah Hanlogton. I don't even know if you say that right.
I'm not even trying. I think it's
Hanlogten. Hanlogten. Is how it's spelled. But anyway, he's a Marshall transfer, 7'1" kid, big time rim finisher, nice prospect. He's sort of named a top 8. He's visiting Florida this weekend. You kind of mentioned that maybe NC State might be a top destination for him. They're in the top 8. Missouri is also in the top 8. The fact that Missouri was in the top 8 for this kid makes me wonder if they're maybe looking at adding more than one big man if they can.
I mean, the roster math until now has been pretty straightforward. They've had 5 guys out, 5 guys in. And if you assume, if we work under the knowledge or the, thinking that Kobe Bryant and Isaiah Mosley will be back, Missouri is probably right up against the scholarship limit. That's also fungible if you think Mabor Bajak is going to not be a scholarship player next year. But regardless, if you bring back the vets you want to bring back, the whole cast, the whole kit and caboodle, you're at 13. Or you're close to the scholarship limit. You may have to go over to add 1 big. If you're going to do 2 bigs, you may have to move somebody else out.
Right.
Or somebody may have to not go on scholarship. So the thinking, had been 2 bigs, at least was my understanding, was that the 2 bigs was the minimum. They went and they got a prep big, a portal big made sense. We've seen Jamarian Sharp, we've seen Kadeem Shedrick, Mike Hanligan today. They're going to host Fardaws Amick, the Texas Tech transfer this weekend. They've reached out to a whole lot of bigs in the portal now over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah,
so the question,
where they reached out to. Peyton Sparks was another guy they reached out to. He committed to Indiana.
yeah, he's off the board.
Um,
Kalel Ware they've reached out to. They've reached out to Issam Mustafa, whole bunch of I think it's pretty much the guys who are left on the board right now. But point being, if they wanted to take two bigs in
Kenny Lampkin went to Colorado.
He was committed to Colorado.
And your boy Isaac Trout.
Isaac Trout going back home to Creighton, which is only perfect for them. So just looking at the board and looking at kind of the way the roster math works, if they're going to take two bigs and another guard, creativity with accounting is going to be required.
Right.
To make this work.
And like it is possible. And again, like a lot of this kind of comes back to like the Kobe Brown situation. Like the new CBA does allow for a few more two-way spots, which I think would be a good fit for a guy like Kobe. You're talking kind of like that late second round. And then you're wondering, like, if he is going to be a guy where he's going to come back. If he's not coming back, then the likelihood that you're going to keep Caleb around is probably not great either. But if Kobe's back, you probably pick Caleb back.
Yeah,
right?
Kobe Bryant has worked 2 scholarship slots. That's the way to put it.
Yeah. So if you're looking at it from like that aspect, like it is still possible that this draws out enough to where Kobe makes a decision that he's not going to return. If that's the case, then maybe you do have enough room to have kind of like two bigs. I think the idea right now is that they definitely want to add a scoring guard. I'm
scoring guard
talked about it last week.
Scoring guard and a big, I think. Are definitely.
We talked about Caleb Love last week without you, with the other Matt. He had, I think the news had just come out that he was in the portal. There was early rumblings at Missouri, it was officially in the portal or whatever. But Missouri was a school that was basically looking like they were going to be in the mix for that. And now, at least the most recent intel seems to be that the only other school that's really in consideration at this point is Michigan.
Yeah.
So it is a duel of the block M's. And Michigan is in a little bit of some dire straits here because they've lost. So Kobe Buffkin is going to the NBA.
He's going to the draft.
Hunter Dickinson went into the transfer portal.
Jet Howard,
arguably their top 3 players.
Yep. But you know what that means? Opportunity. Means opportunity. Minutes and touches and,
maybe not a whole lot of wins, but minutes and touches are.
I think the thought process right now is that it's going to take a late push, for this not to be, Missouri. When and how that transpires, I don't think anybody, I certainly don't know, but, I think we've heard enough collectively that makes us think that, Missouri's in an advantageous position right now when they decide to stop, when, the Love family decides that it wants to make a decision. Unclear, but, I would feel pretty surprised if they're not, in the lead position right now. But, to me, the real question is when are they going to get a big? But, if you're going to try and,
somebody needs to rebound the ball.
Yeah. All these guards are great. Buckets are good, but rebounds. You need them. You need those too. The pickup of Love, if that transpires, when that transpires, I think is obviously going to get a lot of attention. You wrote about it this weekend, about this might be an opportunity for him schematically to be in a better position at Missouri. I do agree that the system fit is probably a little better with this staff. That's not, and that's just purely a basketball perspective. That has nothing to do with Collins' personality or coaching style. It's just what they run every time down the floor might fit him a little bit better. From having watched him at UNC.
Yeah, because what they were doing at UNC was a lot of stuff that Konzo and his crew were doing the last couple of years at Missouri. So there wasn't a huge difference between like what he was going to do at North Carolina, at least once Hubert Davis took over from Roy Williams.
Yeah. Once the Carolina break was shelved, which Hubert had to do in order to retain some of that talent, play more 4-out. I think the biggest loss for them was probably Brady Manick, because he was a reliable floor spacing 4 that you could pull out into space, put him in a corner, and it really made the reads easy for those guards. They had wider gaps to drive. Bacot wasn't facing hard double teams a lot. That went away this year. If you watch them, even if R.J. Davis and even if Caleb Love or Seth Trimble make the right read, Pete Nance was putting up like 0.72 points per possession on spot-ups. Leaky Black wasn't shooting the ball very well. It just made everything compressed and shrunk the floor. I don't think the structure of their offense necessarily fit either RJ or Caleb. I think RJ was their nominal initiator for them. It would bring the ball up, would start a lot of their sets, would be the guy that would sort of get things going. Caleb was sort of that second side guy where if the action flowed and you didn't get anything off that primary, either one post hit to Bacot or off that initial ball screen, usually a step-up ball screen for RJ, then you'd start running second side stuff, and that's when Caleb would get it. And so you'd get him on a lot of ball screens that are slot handoff, zoom action, but compressed spacing. When he's turning that corner, that middle gap is shrunk, it's compressed. We can talk about the rim finishing and the floaters, and just about his finishing in general. I think some of that in shot selection will ultimately come back to him. I don't think you can ever discount that. But I think people who say that, Caleb is a gunner, that's not true. He doesn't initiate offense for UNC. He's frequently, like I said, the second side guy. There are long stretches where he doesn't touch the ball for UNC. Long stretches where he would not get touches. And then there'd be a run where he'd get 3 or 4, and you almost kind of felt like he was making up for lost time. The other issue, I think, too, here is I just don't think the UNC offense was one where you were necessarily having the guards flow and play off each other a lot. You watch how Missouri plays, I think there's a lot more early ball movement. The guards particularly, like even if Missouri's getting into some of its Princeton stuff, which we all think is, pretty slow and old school, that ball's moving. It's touching a lot of hands. Guys are involved. I just think that changes, this sounds touchy-feely, the psychology at which guys play with. So I think that could help, Caleb. If he's getting here, he's playing and stuff where he's involved, where he's moving, he's cutting, he's spacing, he's able to sort of be active, and then he's making reads out of that. I think, could be beneficial for him. So there's a way I think this works, if that's what he wants. And I think the nice thing, the last point I'll make here before we stop getting wonky, is Nick Honor comes down and usually enters the ball to the pinch post. He enters it to, a guy out front for a delay series, or they just run a 5-out ball screen. Like, they keep it really simple. There's not a lot of setup to it. The ball's usually coming out of Nick's hands pretty quickly, and it's getting into action. I think that's a big deal. Things get moving. People get moving. I think that's going to really help Caleb in that sort of situation, put him in spots where I think he's going to be able to, find advantages, create advantages, and play out of stuff a little easier potentially. So that would just be sort of my view of him.
Yeah, I mean, like I said in my post on Sunday, I've long been a believer in Caleb Love's talent. I remember watching him. I believe it was his sophomore year when CBC played, Webster Groves and Courtney Ramey. And Konzo Martin was, I believe Konzo Martin was at that game.
He was in the building for that one.
And
I was at
and CBC, so that was Courtney Ramey's senior year. They won state, and like CBC gave them all they could handle, and a lot of that was because Caleb Love was just awesome. So to go toe to toe with a guy that was 2 years older, a little bit more advanced, not just physically, but also, from a skill level standpoint. I just immediately was like, this guy is way underranked. And I do think that he got to the point, because he did have a strong year after his junior year where, he was, playing really well. And I think he got a little overranked. I think he finished in the top 10.
Top 15. He was number
top 15.
Yeah.
It seemed a little bit high. Like top 25, yeah, top 30, absolutely. But I think like you kind of made the point, like his production and his growth once he hit UNC seemed a lot more like a top 50 guy versus like a top 10 or 15 guy. And I think there's a lot to that. Was maybe the expectations that he had coming into North Carolina were a little too high.
Yeah.
And it's difficult stepping in to that kind of situation where really, like, I think a lot of people expected him to kind of come in and run the team. And he was never really like that point guard. And so eventually those responsibilities got turned over to RJ Davis. That's what actually spurred their run a year ago. Was when they're just like, look, like RJ's going to be our primary point guard. Caleb, we're moving you off the ball. And that, that one of the things that does is it does allow him a little bit more, freedom offensively, which can be a detriment for a guy who is maybe a little too willing to take tough shots. Like I think we were kind of joking in our chat the other day about, a team of, Isaiah Mosley, Caleb Love, and too bad, Dree Golston had expired eligibility, but like the trio of those guys and the difficulty of level of shots that they would be taking would allow Jimmy Dykes to talk about those tough shot makers that they are. But I think I think like overall what you do is you do see levels of growth within Caleb's game. You do see that his turnover rate has come down.
Turnover rate's down.
You do see that his 2-point field goal percentage, his rim finishing percentage has gone up. It's still not where you want it, but it has improved. And I think that there's just things that you can do with him offensively. There's things that you can do, working with him around the rim. And like one of the things that we were talking about off air is like, I really think like he does not shoot enough free throws for being the kind of player that he is and being the kind of attacking player that he is. And I think too often he kind of settles for, those runners, those, like short kind of pull-ups. When what he really should do is try to take it into like, a shot blocker and try to get to the foul line a little bit more. Yeah. And I think if you can kind of make that switch and then get his 3-point shooting back to kind of where it was when he was a sophomore, then I think you have a guy who can, really be like an all SEC performer.
It really is when you watch him when he's at his best. Everything gets stripped back. It's catch, maybe one pause, maybe one reset dribble, and then he goes. He's so good in that first half step at creating separation and burst from guys. And, you just want to see that, go straight to the rim, body, chest of a rim finisher, of a rim protector, draw that contact, make the official make a decision. I think there were games this year where I thought he made great decisions, really good reads as a ball handler. And then guys aren't converting. Like how much of, if, he's got guys that are not shooting, I'm looking at North Carolina here. North Carolina shot 31.2% from three. It was 322 nationally in 3-point percentage. What does he do if he's even got average floor spacers around? What does the assist rate look like at that point? There's a good player here. It's just a question of, I think when I watch games and I take notes, watching him, really the difference is it comes down to 2 or 3, shot decisions and 2 or 3 guys converting shots for him. It really is, if you do that, if you flip some of that, he goes from a guy who's, probably a 75th percentile player, not elite, but he's a really good player, really good creator, advantage creator, can score for you. The question is, are you going to simplify some things? Are you going to simplify what you do off kicks and catch, rip, and go? Are you going to simplify the rim finishing? Are you going to prune out some, 26-foot threes, in ball screens? Just, are you going to trim off some of that excess and really get back to that? If you do that, I think you've got a really, really good player. And the nice thing about him is if you put him alongside a guy like, Mosley, the contrast in how they play and how they create shots is so different. Caleb is, pure speed to power, can get into gaps, can burst, straight line drive. He can get in there, he can create things. Mosley's shifty. He plays off rhythm. He plays off beat, really sets guys up, understands how to get to his counters. The balance of that really makes things hard for you out of a switching system if everybody's switching everything now. And the nice part is, if you even want to space Nick Honor off the ball, he's great with that. He's fine spotting up in that, slot on the 2 side. And you just want to have guards screen and play off each other. Those two have such a different contrast in styles. I think you could really have some fun with that. It's just, can you get things stripped down, simplified for Caleb, and can you get, consistent, presence from Isaiah Mosley? But there's some really fun stuff that can happen within the structure of this offense if you get what people think you can get out of those two.
Well, and I also I think I even pointed this out in my piece. I, at this point, only sort of remember. But if Kobe Brown does come back, and you have essentially 3 guys that you can, look for late in clock to make a play. And the thing, making a play is not I think for Mosley, that's most likely going to be kind of getting a shot. I do think his passing is underrated. But you have 3 guys who are pretty good at reading defenses and making the right pass and getting the ball to the open player. There's a lot to be said for having complementary pieces. And despite all the talent that was at North Carolina last year, I just don't think those guys complemented each other. And like you mentioned Brady Manick, I think not having that guy, in the lineup just completely changed the dynamics of that team. Whereas I think what you have is, depending on maybe who they get as their post player. But if you have Noah Carter in there, you have a guy who can space out and hit threes. If you have Nick Honor, you have a guy that can space out and hit threes. Tanjay is a guy who can space out and hit threes. So you have automatically built into this roster the ability to space the ball, keep the defense honest and allow those those driving lanes to kind of open up for a guy who has shown he can get there.
Yeah. I think that's the one thing. If you watch Tanjay too, that guy plays within himself. I think he's a guy who understands what he has to do, as a ball mover, in those handoffs, where he needs to be, keeping the offense on time, keeping it in rhythm. He can, you can put him out there and he's content lifting and drifting and getting into spots and playing off a guy. And the nice thing I like about Tanjay is Isaiah Stevens is a guy, when you watch Colorado State, they play in an offense, we mentioned, after he committed, it's very similar to Missouri. But Stevens will sometimes just break plays off. He's great at reading the floor, reading positioning of guys and going, I know we're supposed to reverse this out and maybe get into some zoom action on the 2 side, but nah. Guy's leveraged here. I've got to, he's stunting in too far in the gap. I can hit that and go. Tanjay's used to playing with a guy who will riff a little bit within the structure of a Princeton-style, shuffle-style offense. I think that's really, really valuable because he'll understand, even the ball's not coming to him. Oh, my creator's going to do that right now. I need to get somewhere. I need to get available. I need to get shot ready. I think there's value in that. So, again, we don't know when. Still, there's always the possibility that it doesn't happen, but indications look solid right now. But the flexibility that this team could have goes up immensely if you've got that kind of mix of components in there. Now they just need a big to go get rebounds.
Somebody to rebound, please.
Somebody to rebound the basketball.
Well, let's talk about that because Texas Tech transfer Fadaz Imac. I don't honestly know how to say his last name. We've always just refer to him as Fardaws because I think Fardaws is like a rad first name. But so he was at Utah Valley and was putting up double doubles there, and then transferred to Texas Tech and had some injuries. But he came back and was really like when he was healthy, he was a good player for them, and they won 4 games in a row right at a time where he was back in the lineup and healthy. I think he's a big dude. He's like 6'11" and 250 pounds. He rebounds the ball, and he can score around the basket. So like he's not really like the super skilled guy that's I think ideally this staff would be able to or somebody like that. But he is a guy that will finish around the rim and Matt, he can rebound.
Yeah, I think that's, if you watch all the bigs that they are pursuing in the portal, skilled is not how you would describe it. They are play finishers. And look, that's not a criticism. That's just a descriptor of what these guys do. They are really good at, understanding where to be in the dunker spot for drop-offs. Most of them are pretty good rollers and understand how to make themselves available there. They understand how to rim run, and they're going to get on the glass. They know, Fardaws was a guy who was probably the highest usage of any of those bigs at around 28% or 25% last year and 29% at Utah Valley. But, Gideon Shedrick, Jamarian Sharp, Micah Henligan, none of those guys were like heavy usage. You didn't give them the ball and say, hey, you go do something even in the low block with it. They're play finishers.
I promise if these guys sign that we'll make sure we pronounce their names correctly.
We'll get them right. We will absolutely get them right because we're obligated to. But yeah, the difference here is, can they find a big that's mobile enough? Because Missouri's shown that it's going to switch a little bit, or at least guys that can be comfortable in drop coverage, guys who understand how to play with verticality, understand angles inside, can protect the rim, and there's guys that can go get rebounds. Like that's what this team needs. A lot of what Missouri's rim finishing issues were defensively last year because they gave up a lot of second possessions. They gave up a lot of putback opportunities. If you strip putbacks out of their, at rim defense, Missouri was average, like not great, middle of the pack nationally, but far better than what they were. A lot of their issues were they could not secure rebounds. They were giving up 6 to 7 putback attempts per game. You just can't do that. That's 1.2, 1.3 points per possession. That's 12, 13 points a game given up after you've done the work of getting a stop. Securing rebounds, the ability of this group, I think, to be able to play positionally, with a little bit of size around the rim and understand how they need to do that. This team, I think, struggled at times understanding, denying post position, when to front, how to front. Like just that kind of stuff could clean up some of the issues we've seen. They still got to be better on the ball. There's still some perimeter stuff, but just having a guy who can do those basics, who's solid at that, and exceptional on the glass, no less, is really, I think, going to help. So Fardaws can give them that if he's healthy. If the foot is in good shape and he's bought in, committed. There were off-floor issues at Texas Tech too. He went into the portal mid-year. Whispers that he wasn't happy with his NIL situation there. Not happy with Mark Adams. That turned out to be foreshadowing, potentially.
Yeah.
But,
maybe not in the wrong on that one.
But are you going to get a guy here who's going to be healthy, focused, ready to go? If you're getting the guy you got at Utah Valley, the biggest solved. You're going to play him 28 to 29 minutes a night. You're going to throw Noah and, Jordan Butler in there for the rest of it. You wouldn't need a second big if you get a guy like Fardaws. You've got your starter, guy you can keep on the floor for long stretches, who's shown he can play 75% of minutes, 85% of minutes at Utah Valley. If you got a guy who can do that here, I think you will have solved the two biggest problems, the two biggest concerns with this team and this roster right now. You may not need a second big if you can get a guy like Fardaws.
So I think the other name a lot of people probably want to at least hear us mention would be, Jamarian Sharp. Sharp, now that he's in the portal, all signs point to him not returning. And at least, pulling the rope a dope on Mizzou like he did last year and going back to Western Kentucky. All signs are saying at this point that he's gone. Now, whether that's to Missouri is in question. Matt, you watched a lot of tape on Jamarian Sharp. You came away a little unimpressed with some things that Western Kentucky does.
Unimpressed, like, with the environment and, like, the way Western Kentucky plays. There's a lot of talent on Western Kentucky's roster.
I would argue, and I think you could probably argue that
most talented roster in the CUSA. Most raw talent on that roster.
Maybe even more talented than Missouri.
Maybe. But just not, like, it's the little things, like poor footwork on screens, not using, ball screens appropriately, just late rotations, not, communicating ball screen coverages.
Not great lob passes to a 7'5" dude.
Nobody can throw a lob pass to save their life, but yet they attempt 5 of them a game.
He's 7'5", moves well, jumps well, and they couldn't get on the ball.
Yeah, just not even in, like, his catch radius is massive, and they're not even getting into the catch radius for him. So I think that environment matters. I think, Stans always has had a rep as a player getter more so than a schematic whiz, writing talent. I don't think he, in the games I watched, did anything to dissuade me from having that opinion of him. The question is, how developed are you getting in the final product of Jamarian? I think he's obviously, the fluidity's there. He's comfortable in space. He can move pretty well. The question that I sort of have is, he's 7'5". His frame hasn't changed a lot. He's still pretty light in his base. If you watch him against, like, some better bigs, even in the CUSA, if they get position, like, on him and they get that early touch, they can move him. And his length is kind of negated because they can just shove him under the rim. If you are good enough at understanding how to use the rim as a shield, you can get him off a bounce and you can get to the rim and finish it there. Sometimes you can, get him caught out and drop coverage a little bit. He'll encroach a little bit and he'll give a snake and it's game over. Or he'll, sometimes guys will get him if you reject the ball screen. Like, he will assume most guys are going to use. He'll set up and drop. The guy rejects and just blows right by him. Offensively, I think the frustrating thing for him has to be, I don't even know why he even rolled into post-ups and duck-ins, because nobody would even look at him. Like, nobody would even think to, like, reward the big for setting the screen and rolling and ducking. Struggled a little bit in post-ups. I don't know if he's necessarily, at least even against guys who are strong bigs, like Usman of North Texas, Golden of, Florida Atlantic, those kind of bigs. UAB's got some really, really sturdy bigs. Didn't move them a lot, and I think you can bump him. He's heavily reliant on his hook shot. If you get him one step up off the block or up the lane, those become short arm, pulling the string hook shots. So he's great at rim finishing. If you lob it to him and you put it on the rim, he'll go get it. If you can find him ducking in, he's pretty good. He can get on the glass occasionally, but the question here is going to be, do you feel like the strength and sort of durability and sort of is going to be able to translate up? But there's no doubt that, if he gets on a guy's hip as a driver, he can block a shot. He can rotate over and block shots. He can, trail block. If you don't do your work early and you don't have the position, it's game over. He's just going to play vertical and straight up and you're not going to finish. So there's stuff there. It's just, can you get the weight and the strength where it needs to be? And is just being in an environment like Missouri going to naturally extract more out of him, because there's going to be more structure, more accountability, better stuff day to day, everything like that. So better everything. But, there's always that, the tantalizing potential there, but there's always the downside risk of that. Whereas like a Kadeen Shedrick, who you've seen, Tony Bennett's going to coach defense. He's going to coach fundamentals. His guys are going to understand what scheme they're in, what scout they're in.
That I love that dude as a potential addition. I I would take him over any other big in the portal. Like, I just love his athleticism. I feel like he can make all the same blocks and rebounds that you can get from Sharp. He's got a little more polish offensively.
Yeah.
He can stretch the floor a little bit.
Yeah.
I like him. Really, if you put that dude in this Missouri offense with Caleb Love and Isaiah Mosley and Kobe Brown.
Other deal is, too, a lot of blocker movers, a lot of mid-post, a lot of elbow stuff. He's going to be comfortable setting screens, connecting stuff there. Not 100% Princeton, but some skill set stuff, connective stuff you want from your bigs.
But that's the only guy who's also very popular in the portal.
Yeah,
I think he cut his list to like 20, and then Duke's like, oh yeah, we want to be in too. So
yeah, then the club opened back up. We were taking enough people left the club that we could let people in the club. We had a fire marshal allowed that. Kadeen was a good fire marshal there, but good player. We'll see what they can do there. But if you ask me on tape, the ones I like, I'm with you. I'm a Kadeen Shedrick guy.
Yeah. So I think those are probably the three guys that we're tracking the closest at this point. We still have not had evidence that Shedrick is going to make it to campus. IMAC is going to make it to campus. We're assuming at some point Sharp is probably going to make it to campus. But those three, and then if they can get Himlogton, however you say his name, to campus, I think that's a kid I would love to look at.
Same with Ware. I would love to look at Khalil Ware, but that's also a popular name.
Yeah, that doesn't seem like something that Missouri is going to be able to pull off. I think we talked a little bit about that last week. But so it is Tuesday night. We delayed this recording by one night because of the national championship game last night. Congratulations to the UConn Huskies. They were fantastic. I was joking today, like, maybe Dennis Gates, saw UConn run roughshed over the entire NCAA tournament, and it's just like, oh, like I need two bigs. So it's Tuesday. The rest of the week, what are we watching for?
If
Caleb makes an announcement,
if Caleb makes an announcement, the other thing is the visits are happening this weekend because it's that little 4-day break in the dead period. So you're going to maybe see some visits happening this weekend. Then we go dead for another week or 10 days after that. The one thing to consider is Missouri, really did a lot of its work in mid-April last year. A lot of their commitments came in mid-April. They had a lot of guys come in. I think they had multiple guys in during the dead period last year. And just a whole host of visitors, because we were saying we joked that Dennis Gates was just doing his commitment photo shoots back to back to back to back. But there's going to be another break after that. We'll see if there's any other outbound traffic at this point. Doesn't seem like there's any that's imminent to happen here. But the next piece I think people are going to watch for is when Caleb Love makes a decision. This staff has shown that it's pretty good at closing guys down after visits. Does the Fardaws Amick visit go fast enough that he wants, to keep looking, or does he just decide this is over with? If that happens, then, in an ideal world, and I think fans' dream world, by middle of next week or late a week from now, or late next week, 2 slots are filled, and the bulk of the work is done.
We at least have some clarity. We'll still be kind of waiting to hear what Kobe Brown's going to do, what Isaiah Mosley's going to do. I think right now the expectation is both guys will be back in some capacity, but we'll see. There's a draft process that has to happen. Kobe has to go through it. And so
he's got to declare. He's got to put out word that he is going through it.
Yeah, that is true. He does have to tell people that he's going to go. I would expect, that announcement probably coming some point soon. So we're going to wrap this up. We are going to be back. It'll probably be me and the other Matt next week. We'll just kind of keep alternating you guys until we get some finalized roster. We can actually maybe all three of us get together and talk about it. But make sure that you are subscribed. So down below is our subscribe button. If you're subscribed, you get notifications when this video drops, when future video drops. I believe actually right now, if not right now, then certainly around now, Nate and BK are recording their first video podcast. That's exciting, everybody. So you'll get all those notifications, and we will continue to produce under the Rocket Radio banner, Fans First Sports Network, showing the love. Those guys are great. Make sure you follow Matt. His Twitter handle is there, Matt J Harris 85. You can follow me at Sam T Snelling. At Data Mizzou is Matt Watkins. We're talking portal stuff pretty much all the time. So head over there, do all that, and we'll be back next week. Well, Matt will. I will. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.